Right.
Are you guys ready for your debut?
Yep. We're ready. Been waiting 50
Absolutely.
years for it.
Okay.
You're live.
We're live.
See.
All right, guys, 50 years we've been waiting for this.
It's been a long time, that's for sure.
It's been a long time. I want to make sure that everything's running. Do you see us?
I do.
All right. Oxfords, welcome.
Hi, Jody.
Thanks, Jody.
Jody.
Hi, guys. It only took 50 years, right?
What's 50 years between friends?
What does it feel like to have a #1 CD on Amazon's charts at this point in your life?
Are you addressing that to anyone specific?
Anybody that wants to answer, what's it like having a live seat, a #1? Like, you guys are #1. How does that happen?
It's absolutely fantastic.
I still
You know,
Yeah.
all of us were wannabe rock stars, and finally, at 70 years old, that dream has partially come true, at least in our own minds.
in our minds.
Exactly.
Well,
Else's.
so I want to start. First of all, I want to introduce you guys. I'm hoping that we do it on the left-hand screen, and I'm very nervous because my entire family is watching, and so the pressure is really on, okay? So we have on one of the sides, we have Steve Bell Silver, wave, and then on the right, we have Joel Maslow.
Tell them what we played, Jody.
Why you tell them, what did you play?
I was the lead singer and joined the group very early on and really learned to sing from your father. He was the one that taught us all the harmony parts, and he really helped me along with my musical knowledge.
Wow. And Joel, and you're the drummer.
I'm the drummer, and Byron, our keyboard player, and I started this group over 50 years ago.
Yeah, I can't wait to tell everybody how that started because none of this makes sense. And then Gary, you're in the bottom here.
Right. I'm in the bottom. I'm for you. I am. I'm moving myself around, so I'm.
You're moving yourself around.
Okay. I'm below you now. Yes, I'm the guitar. I was the lead guitar player.
You were the lead guitar player, and also,
Sometimes sing. I sang some harmonies.
and you
And some
wrote.
leads.
Okay, and then Fonz, how about you?
I was the bass player, and you know, I had been working with Gary since we were in the 5th grade, and Steve Silver, you know, same thing. We were buddies, and your dad taught me to understand music, and I actually never looked back from there.
Fonz is the only one that stayed in music for his entire life.
Yeah, and you were the only one that had no aspirations of it, right?
I had no idea. I mean, I think I had aspirations just like everybody else, but I didn't have any idea. I thought I would be, you know, if they were to write a little thing that would be least likely to succeed in the music business. And I haven't stopped since, so
Well, you fooled them all, Steve.
that's right.
Well, I continued to play. I never stopped, except for 1 year when I moved to New York from Philly, because I didn't know anybody up here. But then when I got to know the scene, I've been playing in bands, and one band I played in for 25 years. But where I live in the Hudson Valley, this place has all of the talent that either lives near New York City or works in New York City. I'm also about 30 minutes from Woodstock. So there's that whole community up there. So it's all around me, all the world-class musicians in the East Coast, up in the New York City area, are right where I live. So I've met a lot of these people, and I've played with a lot of these people too over the years. I've been playing ever since I left. I only retired maybe about 5 years ago from playing at all. So
Wow. Well, I want to bring everybody up to speed of why this is so important, especially to me. So about maybe 2 months ago, my dad, who just passed away almost 5 weeks ago on Sunday, my dad raised us with the Oxfords. he told us all these stories about the Oxfords group that he was in when he was a teenager. And he played us the music. All my sister and I were raised with the music. It was all that he really played. And he continued to play keyboard for my entire life. He never gave up. And a couple months ago, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, a very rare cancer. And so our lives like literally stopped. And then one day he comes to the house and he goes, "You're not going to believe this." He says, "The Oxfords, right?" "Yeah." He goes, "Somebody wants to put our music out." And the immediate thing I thought was wonderful of all the times, because I don't know that my dad's ever going to actually see this come to fruition. But you guys didn't know, you guys haven't seen each other. You physically have not been in a room together in over 50 years. Is that right?
Correct.
You guys didn't even know that my dad was sick until I had to tell you, because my dad, being my dad, was like, "You got to talk to Jody. You got to talk to Jody. She's, going to get our name out there." And then I had to tell you, unfortunately, because he didn't want to tell you guys. Then you got reunited on a Zoom call like we're doing now. And that was the first time you even saw each other. I mean, forget about being in a room, but you hadn't even seen each other in 50 years. Is that right?
Yes.
That's right.
Let's mention your dad's name, by the way. I don't think you mentioned it yet.
My dad, Byron Blau, was the keyboard player in the band. And I want to tell you before we start, because this is kind of weird. I want to play a little snippet, if I can do it correctly, of a song called High School Dropout, Don't Be a High School Dropout. I want people to hear what this song is, because this is very important to this story. So.
Don't be a high school dropout. Don't throw your chance away. You gotta play it cool. Stay in school, you gotta wait till you graduate. Don't be a high school dropout. Don't make that great mistake. Yeah, stay in school. Yeah, stay in school. Yeah. Well, no one likes a quitter.
This song, Don't Be a High School Dropout. I know a lot of people can tell you guys things, but I have proof that my dad raised me on the Oxfords. The other night I was thinking about something hit me. I know that this song reminded me of something. I was the yearbook editor in 1991 when I was in high school. And I was in charge of putting the yearbook together. And I wanted to do something special for my dad. And I'm hoping you can see this.
Oh,
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's my handwriting in the yearbook that went to everybody. And I wrote all the words to Don't Be a High School Dropout. And so that was over 29 years since you guys had last even seen each other. That's how much of an impact your band had on my dad, and then also on my sister and I.
Did that song have an impact on keeping anybody from dropping out of school?
No, but I think I might owe you royalties, because I did it wasn't copywritten, and I did, profit off of this. I think this.
Good for you.
We'll let you slide.
they made us write and record that.
Isn't that crazy? All of a sudden, I'm like, I know that I've seen this before. So I want to start from the beginning. My dad told me that you guys were playing. My dad describes Philadelphia back in the 60s as a place where he said he was smoking when he was 6 years old, taking SEPTA when he was 7 years old. But Joel, I think you can verify a little bit of what my dad said. How did you meet my dad? How long do you know my dad for?
My whole life, basically, because we grew up together. He lived across the street from me. So before he could even walk or I could even walk, I think he was there. He's 2 years younger than I am. It wasn't for a few years after that we got to know each other. Maybe we were 8 years old, 7 years old. I'm not sure exactly how old we were. So Byron and I used to sit on the front steps of our houses, and we used to play bongos and bang out all kinds of weird notes and things like their beats and stuff like that. But I knew he was a piano player, and I always used to test him because he had perfect pitch. And I would bang on something that would make a tone. I said, Byron, what note is that? Oh, C sharp. Prove it. Run up into the house, hit C sharp on the piano. Never failed. He was perfect. So after a while, I was like a child prodigy drummer too, because I could play drums ever since I could possibly remember. And one day I said to Byron, we're probably about 14 years old, maybe somewhere in there. And I said, let's get a band together. So he knew everybody in the business because he was classically trained, but he knew classically trained musicians, not rock and roll people. So we got a horn player, we got a saxophone and a trumpet, and a singer named Harvey Lance was his stage name. Harvey Goldglance was his real name. And he was one of these guys whose parents actually pushed him to be the next Frank Sinatra. So there was no problem in him singing and all this. So we got this little group together and we did the hospital circuit. We did the nursing homes, because the nursing homes were in the hospitals back in those days. So we played a lot of those kind of little things. Well, this goes on for a little while, and then the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan's show. And Byron and I were at my house, went downstairs to watch the show. I think my parents were in the same room. We watched the whole show, watched the Beatles do their first appearance on Ed Sullivan. We came upstairs after it was over, and we both kind of like walked up slowly, didn't say anything. You know, we kind of sat down on our instruments, and because we had a piano in my living room, and along with my drums. And we said, you know what? No more of this old stuff. We're done with that. We're going to be playing rock and roll. Now, maybe a couple of weeks later, because we didn't know anybody who could play rock and roll. We needed a guitarist. We needed who knows what. We're walking down the street, and we come past another house where a friend of mine, Billy Krupnick, lived in. And out of this house, we heard this amazing guitar playing coming out of it. For some strange reason, we have no idea why. In there was Robert Fleischer, another friend of mine. And guess who comes out after the rehearsal? Gary Stanley, carrying his guitar in the case. And we kind of like glommed on him and said, you got to come with us. We want you to play in our rock and roll band we're forming. And he did. He just like left these other guys and back. Yeah, we wouldn't let him go. We had to have him. And so he came over to Byron's, I think it was at Byron's house. And we played a little bit together, and we said, well, this is it. This is the beginning. You're in. And they had a singer, Bill Reese, who was with that group. We took him along with us too. After a while, we kicked Bill Reese out because he wasn't cutting it. And Gary introduced us to Steve Silver as our lead singer, and also Steve Gelfand, who was Fonz, our bass player. Fonz came in as a rhythm guitarist. So that was the core of the group. So we had Gary, we had Steve Gelfand, and then they brought in Steve Silver, who was the lead singer, and myself and Byron. So that was the 5 core guys in the group. Ivan joined later when we got a manager and we wanted to write our own songs.
Just like he is tonight.
Exactly.
Yes. So we don't know where Ivan is. He's not there right now. Something must have happened because
He joined us later.
So anyway, that's how the group started. But the interesting thing is, if we hadn't been walking down the street that day at that particular time, because Gary says he was only in that house one time, if we hadn't heard him play, we wouldn't be here right now. The Oxford wouldn't have formed.
Just remind me again, how old were you guys? How old was my father, and how old were you guys when you formed a band, had a manager, and started getting gigs?
Just under 16 when we started. We hadn't got our license yet to drive. So we were just under 16 years old when we got the band together.
Our parents had to take us to gigs.
Yeah, I think I was maybe almost 15. Gary was probably almost 15.
Same thing.
We weren't driving yet. I mean, we had to like, Mommy, can you take me to the gig?
So
Mom,
you,
can you take these 2 girls home with us?
so you're not old enough to even drive, and you're describing an actual band. You had, and a manager took you guys seriously. as a bunch of young teenagers?
Well, Gary, Fonz, and myself, not only did we live in the same neighborhood, we lived on the same block, coincidentally. And one of our other friends' fathers heard us play, and he became our manager. He invested a little money, and he took us to our first recording session. And that's how we started recording.
Why was he interested in us? I mean, his
Because
son-
Jeff Rosen, his son, was one of my best friends.
Okay.
This is all just
Easy
unbelievable.
Wild Bill,
Yeah.
through being friends with Jeffrey.
So then, okay, so if my dad played the piano, were there keyboards back then?
They were
Yeah.
just starting. They were
Just
just
coming
starting.
out. The first electric pianos just starting to come out.
Remember, as the Beatles came out, not long after the Dave Clark Five came out, and they made
Right.
pianos really.
Right.
What was
There
the
were
name,
a
what was
few
the name
companies
brand
that
of that
made-
piano?
Yeah. There were a few companies that made portable keyboards.
Wurlitzer was one.
Wurlitzer, Lowry, and I think your dad had a Farfisa or a Lowry. And you can hear them all over our records, you know. And then there was also a B3, which weighed about 2,000 pounds, and the Leslie, between the B3 and the Leslie. So we never had that because we traveled. I mean, we just,
Leslie
all
was
over
the
the place.
speaker system, but it was a giant box, which also weighed like 100 pounds or so.
yeah, I mean, the whole thing, you know, portable keyboards then, you needed a trucking company. But Byron had, you know, one of the few. And then when
There he is.
Hey!
Here he is.
You didn't start without me, did you?
No!
Oh,
No.
I heard you talking about Byron, yeah.
we're
Like,
still practicing.
We were
Oh,
trying
you
to
didn't hear what
emulate.
we said about you? Oh, that's good.
Was that a Farfisa he had?
Anyhow, so Byron was a piano player, a serious piano player.
Uh-huh.
But when we went on gigs, he adjusted and played, you know, this organ, which, you know, wasn't a B3. We couldn't carry one of those. It was portable. And, you know, I know we always wished, you know, there was a piano in the gig so he could play it. But then again, you wouldn't have been able to hear it because we were a young, loud band, you know.
Nothing was mic'd, just the voices.
Hey,
Back in those days, you didn't have a guy sitting in the front of the house with a mixing
No.
board, you know, mixing everything together. It was just us singing through the PA system, and the drums weren't mic'd at all, so you had to bang the crap out of them to be heard over everything else. That's the way it was back in those days. Except when the
also,
Beatles came
there
out,
was no monitors back
No.
then, so we couldn't hear ourselves.
when the Beatles came out, you'll notice Ringo Starr was always elevated above the other group. So that's the way they put the drummers on all the stages after that for local, whoever was playing, they built up a little bit higher to put the drums up high.
Did we have it that way at the Hullabaloo Club? I'm
Yes, we
getting
did.
We did.
Ceiling was right here, and when I got done playing every night, I couldn't hear out of one ear.
I used to put
So
myself
how did,
on the ledge where the drum, on the riser where the drum was. Because Joel was way up and we were excited. Sorry, Jody. And I used
No,
to
you're
put
fine,
my
you're
coats there.
no, now even because I'm into the 60s music, and the Monkees are my favorite band in the whole world. So I know of the Hullabaloo. I know that was like a big thing back in the day. My dad never actually told me about the Hullabaloo Club. What exactly was that?
Ivan?
Ivan, are you there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. You want me to answer that?
You got the Hullabaloo t-shirt right next to you.
There, Hullabaloo had a very big TV show.
Right.
It was the show to watch where all the new bands were on it. And it catered to the young 60s aesthetic. We didn't call it that at the time, but it was a happening show. And all the bands that made big records played on it from England and the United States. And there was a guy named John Angel. And John Angel came up with the idea of making hullabaloo teen clubs all over the United States. So he started one in LA. Oh, the Doors played there, and the Buffalo Springfield played there. All the bands played there. And then he started franchising them all over the United States. I may be wrong because it sounds like a fantastic number, but I think at one point he may have had 100 or 200 hullabaloo clubs all over the country. And it was a big deal in the beginning. One of the places he wanted to open one was in Pennsylvania. So the Hullabaloo Club that they opened in Conshohocken in a big warehouse, it must have held 1,000 kids in there. And that was the first one that opened in Pennsylvania. And so he came here because he would not let the people who ran it hire the house band. He had to choose that. And there's, we have conflicting stories about how that actually happened. But the bottom line is, I remember calling him on the phone, and my mother had seen an ad in a newspaper. And there's conflicting stories about how this happened. But I remember talking to him on the phone and saying to him, you do not have to look any further. The Oxfords are the best band in this entire area. There's no doubt about it. Once you hear us, you will just hire us. Once you see us, you'll hire us. That'll be it. And then I think I told our manager I called, and he called them, because next thing I knew, we had an audition, and it seemed like, maybe the guys can help, it seemed like it was in an old church. And we set up and we played, I'm thinking a song by the Searchers or the Hollies with a lot of harmony that had just come out. You've got your troubles, I got mine. Is that, I don't know. But
That's the Searchers.
yeah, and I just remembered we played that, and the guy looked at us and he looked around and he said, that's it. You got the job, you're it. And it was an amazing gig because it was 1,000 people there. It was black lights. You had a stage that was 30 feet wide, 4 foot off the floor. And when you got on that stage and you played, it just was like, wow. It was like you felt like you were there.
Like Woodstock.
Yeah, you just felt like you were it. I mean, and the
Remember,
kids treated us like that.
this was an under 21 club, no alcohol. So these kids really had no place else to go. So Hullabaloo was it. Hundreds of kids from all over the Philadelphia area every Friday and Saturday night. It was only open on the weekends.
Whenever we played there, it was packed. And so, I mean, the guy loved us who ran it. I don't know if he had a percentage of it. His name was Stanley Packman. And he liked this so much that when we started doing it, suddenly we were always kind of busy and people calling us. But I just remember suddenly, we were getting all these calls to do big parties and proms and stuff. And he just said to us, you can pick whatever night you want to play, as long as you can be here, hopefully at least one night a week. And we would play there one night, and the gigs we had other places were better paying gigs. So, and it was great because no matter who he got in there, he told me, no matter who he got in there, the kids all wanted the Oxfords, and not as many kids would come. And when we would come, the pace was jammed. You could feel it. They used to have a big garage door where we would all drive up to and take our gear in. And the whole vibe of it all was just like, it was like you were waiting for us to start playing.
Yeah, I mean, did we leave our gear set up all week long and just?
Sometimes, if we didn't have another gig in between, yes.
Every Saturday night, they had a professional group come in, like the Four Tops or
They had a deal with Motown.
or Motown mostly, and sometimes we would back them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Four
The
Tops,
band that my
Martha
dad-
Vandellas, Mary Wells, the Spinners. A lot of groups played there,
Wait,
and we backed them up.
Your band that my father was in backed up people like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
A while.
once a month, there was a rock and roll show at the Uptown Theater. For like $5, you could see the Temptations, the Four Tops, the Miracles, all on the same show. They would do an after on the weekends, only open on the weekends. Friday, they would do a 2:00 matinee, an 8:00 show, and a midnight show. So I'm like 12, 13 years old, and I'm taking the bus and the subway all by myself at that age from Mount Airy down to the Temple University campus. It was at Broad and Susquehanna, the Uptown Theater. Now, this was a circuit. They had the Apollo in New York. They had the Uptown in Philly. They had the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And the Motown shows went to each of those theaters. When it came to Philly, one of the groups would come out to Hullabaloo. They had a deal with Hullabaloo.
Yeah.
Would come out and play, and we would back them up. And then sometimes I got to sing harmony with these guys, which just blew my mind, you know? Yeah.
It was all a very big to do. It doesn't maybe, I can't quite express the kind of big to do there.
Because there was nothing else like it back then.
But, you know, if you were a high school kid, whether you went to Olney or Northeast or Germantown or Central or out some other school, Lower Merion, I mean, they came from all over. So it was a real cult thing, and we were the band.
And they
So
didn't
it
have
was,
to pay a lot of money
Exciting.
for show. It wasn't very inexpensive. They got almost as good as if they had.
Wait, so my dad got paid?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
hey,
What do you think? We went for free? We're
And
Jewish,
at that time-
remember?
you know, there was a transition point. I'm not sure when it was, when your dad went into the Coast Guard or when it was, but we had to make a transition because he wasn't available to play, and we had to bring in other guys to play with us. And I think that was kind of towards the end of the Hullabaloo period. But it's like
I think
wasn't.
Byron was with us all through Hullabaloo.
Well, I know that towards the end, Bruce Brody played, because in my mind I can see him playing Light My Fire on
Right.
stage.
Right.
So I don't know when. I mean, I wish I had pictures. We can't even get pictures of ourselves.
But Jody, it's not like we made a lot of money. You know, we made gas money and we made diner money and stuff like that.
Guys, I don't think that's true, guys. Remember, I did the contracts. We were making at 16 years old, $600 or $700 a gig, which was $100 a man.
Yeah.
So a couple hundred on a weekend for 16-year-old kids, that's good money.
It's true.
I know it's true, because I remember me and another guy rented a place down on Cherry Street, or one of those streets down near the Museum of Natural History, or what, down Philly. And
Franklin Institute.
and I remember going to, this was before they had these stores in Philly yet. I remember going to Greenwich Village and buying like 5 or 6 shirts and the pants that came out, and granny sunglasses, because those stores had not quite happened in Philly yet. They did,
Okay.
but this was right on the cusp. It's like, when I
The
read
name?
that article last night, of that guy, Mike McDowell, or Mike Dodd, who wrote that story about us, and, really got me thinking about that, how 1964, there were bands covering other rock groups like the Beatles and whoever else first came out in the beginning, but there were no Philly rock groups. There were none. It was just like soul, doo-wop, and soul and R&B stuff.
Mhm.
So for us to be doing original songs and writing them or performing, making records, it was in a way a real breakthrough, because I remember starting at Temple in 65, and I met I had known Daryl, but I met the guys in Mandrake Memorial and Todd Rudgren and Nas, and these are all guys who then the wave came And it was a transition where they started to make like, became psychedelic and everybody started
You
making
say Daryl.
albums.
Ivan, when you say Daryl, I want to establish this is Daryl Hall from
Hall and
Hall.
Oates.
Yeah, he was an a cappella singer.
We all went to college together.
And so we sang doo-wop.
Did my dad know him?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I started singing harmony with Daryl behind the bowling alley at like 13 years old. And then we went to the hot shop
I
about
remember
10 miles away. And that's where the Omni guys went there also. Let me tell you a quick story about New York that Ivan was talking about. So the reason we went up there was this guy, Bill Sargent, who later became a big person in the record industry. But he had the original store that sold Beatle suits with the no collar, and bell bottoms and Beatle boots. And that's why I would go to New York, to get the clothes from when we played in the band. So one day I'm up there and I go to Sargent's and I buy my clothes. And then there was this really cool military store, like where you could buy like Sergeant Pepper type uniforms in the East Village. So I took a cab over to the East Village and I'm walking down the street and you see this crowd in front of a club and I hear this amazing music coming out the door. So I forced my way through the crowd, and it's Sly and the Family Stone.
Yeah.
Completely unknown, no records out or anything. This was 1965, maybe. And then, of course, I saw them 4 years later closing Woodstock. They were just mind-blowing. But
I
even
got a
back
story
then,
like
in
that.
65, they were fantastic. They had,
Everything happened in New York first.
Yeah.
Pretty much. For example, I went to a place called the Electric Circus. This is before there was an electric factory. And it was kind of more like you see in the movies in the transition period where they're like discotheques in England. It was more like that. And Sly and the Family Stone was playing there as like the house band in this club. Then it was later on that, Larry Maggot got the idea they have Electric Circus. I'll make Electric Factory. And he opened up this club. This is around 67, I guess, maybe, in Philly.
I don't know how we got on Sly, but I played on the bill with them at the Uptown Theater. I used to
really?
play at the Uptown Theater, and before they were, before anybody knew who they were everywhere and did everything. But they were like the forefront of, that era, and they started out playing the Uptown doing.
Well, who were you with, Steve? Who were you playing with?
I was with the Temptones then.
Oh,
Which
So
is
that was,
Daryl's original group, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I wonder-
forgot about that you played with the Temptones.
Yeah.
You knew Brian Utane.
Oh,
Right.
very well, man.
Yeah. Well, he was the bass singer in my group, the Feltons. And, it's all connected.
Little
That's
Brian,
funny.
it's all connected,
It really is.
While
That's
you
why we're
guys
here.
were talking about the Beatles, I want to play a little snippet of one of the songs that are on the CD. I was actually raised with this version of You Won't See Me, and I didn't know that there was a Beatles version. So I want to play.
When I call you up, your line's engaged. I have had enough, so I can rage. We have lost the time that was so hard to find, and I will lose.
You gotta leave it on, Jody, so the harmony comes in.
I
Yeah, it's only
can't.
a snippet.
This is all I got. 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So who arranged that? Because I actually like it better than the Beatles version, because it's the first version I ever knew.
I'll
But
tell you, the arranger was a fella named Jimmy Wisner, who arranged a lot of the music that came out of Cameo Parkway. Jimmy was like a big arranger in those days. with all the Philly bands that did records. He arranged for Chubby Checker, Bobby Rydell, all those, the Orlons who were big in Philly. And so as we started to, you know, climb up the ladder, everybody kind of thought we ought to get these guys produced. And so it's funny how that record affected me in two ways. And I think all of us would probably feel very similar. It's a little arranged, a little too arranged for us. The Beatles, when they did something, you didn't want to put too much lipstick on that. I think if we had our choice, we would have done it a little more down home. But
Without
at
the
that
horns,
point,
probably.
you know, at that point, that was the first time an adult came into the room with us
Yeah.
and helped us make a record. So
Yeah.
we just went with it, and it, you know, it was a produced record. But if you listen to the vocal, which we just did, it's unbelievable. We came up to the Jimmy Wisner arrangement,
Yeah.
and Jimmy was like a god in those days, not just in Philly, but when I ended up playing sessions, I worked for him in New York, you know, and I saw some of the guys on that session up in New York. So we had like a first-rate arranger come in, you know, and producer and do that. So that record is really, you know, kind of a combination of, it's like a crossover for us into the
It is
real.
It's very well produced.
Yeah.
It-
Oh,
it
It
is
sounds like the most professional of all the tracks.
And how
very
old were
unusual.
you?
We were six.
How old were you when you did that record?
Well, Joel and I were probably at that point
17 maybe?
8. Well, is that in 65, you think, or 66?
65, I think.
65. So
Yeah.
in 65, Joel and I were 18.
And I was 17.
And I
And
was,
Gary was maybe 16 and a half.
And I was 16.
And
I was
Todd
17.
16. So if this is hard to explain, because I know this is going to be hard to imagine, but we never talked about this, about how we felt about doing all this. It was just like all happening.
It's happened.
And
Yeah.
it was just so amazing. I could hardly believe it because it was just like, I always thought honestly that it was just the beginning, and when it was just going to keep going on like this. And you know, then a lot of things happened and it ended, or we took different directions.
We never
But at the
played these
time, it was
Yeah.
like,
in public.
I was getting used to just going in the recording studio and making records. It just seemed like the normal thing. Once you start doing it, you go in and you go maybe 10 times to make recording sessions, and you start getting used to singing in there and
And
expecting.
you don't know how good it is or not.
Well,
Well, you know, it's pretty good. Like, you know,
In
I always knew it
retrospect,
was
you
pretty
can get a
good.
much better
Otherwise,
feeling for it.
You wouldn't get,
Joel, move a little closer to your microphone, Joel.
we
yeah, I
we
can't
had-
hear you.
hear me now?
Yeah.
Very light,
There's I don't know why
very,
it's
very
light.
low.
It shouldn't have. If you stop talking, maybe it'll get louder. Is it better now?
yeah,
No, it's not.
No.
Because I had the volume all the way up, so I can.
That's better now.
Good now.
Now it's better.
Anyway, well, every time I went in the studio, the recording engineer would make a copy of the song that we did that day, or a couple of songs, wherever we finished that day. He'd make a copy of the master tape, and that tape was given to, I don't know who, maybe our manager got it. Ivan may have, I don't know who got the tape. But after a while, I said, I want to make copies of these for my own use. So I got all the tapes. I made copies of those tapes for myself. And I've kept them all these years. I never got rid of the tape. It's on one reel. It's monophonic. And that's also why we're talking, because if I hadn't done that, we wouldn't be here.
none of it really
The only
helped.
music that got out were the 4 records that were released, 8 songs. And that's not enough for an album. But we have all the songs that we did in the studio, and I kept them all these years. And that's what I made for your father. I made a cassette for that stuff. He wore the cassette out. He called me up 10 years later and said, I need a new copy. Let's digitize it. I said, oh, good, great idea. So I digitized the whole thing. And that's how we have the CDs. Now these records, these recordings are preserved forever now because they've been digitized and they're all over the place. So
Now,
they're
all
backed up
this
in a million
time,
ways.
I was unaware that there was any music saved. I hadn't
here's the
heard
thing.
one
Here's the thing.
word, one note until just a few months ago.
These songs were never played out in public. We only did them in the
Right.
studio. These guys here never heard these recordings, most of them, except for Byron. And Ivan 10 years ago or 5 years ago, because we met at our class reunion and I gave him copies. Other than that, no one's heard this stuff for 55 years.
See, we were a cover band, and our audience was not interested in our original material.
Nobody wanted to hear our own stuff.
So we just recorded them and then never played them again.
So then that's perfect, because now the year 2020 comes, and all of a sudden, you guys haven't seen each other, haven't spoken, no contact whatsoever. The Oxfords was something you did when you were teenagers. And then I want you to, how did this happen? I know it started with you, Ivan. How did this happen?
Well, I'll give you the short version.
Yes.
The short version is that 20 years ago, a guy contacted me, said he was writing a book and he had Oxford's records. And I said, how could you have Oxford's records? And he said, well, they're collector's items. They sell on eBay. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, that's cool. And I gave him as much info as I could on the people in the band. And he put a book about Pennsylvania garage bands, he called them. We're in it. And at the time he said, and there were collectors who would love to have, the Oxfords make an album, if you had the masters and recordings. And I said, well, we don't have anything like that. I don't even know where the guys are, honestly. And then about a couple months ago, it all coincided with, your dad getting sick. It all happened at the same time, and he sent me a letter and he had some pictures and he was going to make a Facebook page about the Philly bands and things, which he's done. And he said, was this the band, the Oxfords? And he showed, I had a picture and I said, yeah, that's Steve, that's Bell, or Fonts playing bass and whatever. And he said, and it still would be so great. I said, well, I don't know. My buddy Joel, who was the drummer, he was a tech guy. Somehow he had some kind of tapes, because he made a tape for me or CD, and I'll call him, maybe he still has stuff. I called Joel and Joel says, oh, I've got everything and it's all now on MP3s, and it can be tweaked so it kind of comes up to close to the standards of when we recorded it. And that set the ball going. And then I spoke to the guy who had Gear Fab, and he said he'd love to do it. Originally was thinking about doing just a band, an album of all different Philly bands. And he said, could you send me snippets? Oh yeah, snippets. I got to go get mine. And Joel put it together and we sent it, and he said, let's make it. Let's make an album, definitely. And now I'm told it's the quickest best-selling album he had, and he's got 800 artists. So that's saying something. It's very exciting.
So Ivan, then you called Joel, and Joel had everything. Then who called my dad?
I did.
Joel did.
You called my dad, and what was his reaction? What did you say to my dad?
Well, I sent him an email first if he would be interested. And I said, I think I have your current phone number. And he wrote back, said, yeah. I said, we're going to do this project. We're going to put a record out. Would you want to be interested? Because Ivan said to me, do you think everybody would want to do it? Because maybe someone doesn't want to do it. Maybe they're in the witness protection program or something. Maybe they don't want to have their face known, right? So we try to find everybody, and Byron, because Byron, I had been talking to Byron over the years, so I knew him. So I knew where he was. Ivan knew kind of where Silver was, and he knew where he heard that Fonts was in New York. Here's the funny thing. Fonts is working only an hour away from where I live all these years.
Right.
I never knew it. We could have gotten together.
Ivan lives not far from where my parents lived.
No,
Right.
I didn't know that.
Right.
So
And when Facebook first came out, I looked up Ivan, Gary, and Fonts, and did speak with them like 10, 15 years ago, whenever Facebook first came out. But then we fell back out of touch again.
So after the call to Byron and I haven't gotten in touch with everybody else, we had our first Zoom meeting, and that's how all 6 of us were together for the first time in 55
Wait a
years.
minute, there was an intermediate step here where Ivan needed to get in touch with me because we were the songwriters, and I couldn't remember writing all the songs with him. He had to convince me. I only remember 2 or 3 songs, and there's 12 songs sitting there. Who wrote them for us? Little elves? So it's still a little bit amazing to me that all this was it's like I'm discovering it for the first time. It's like another band. We're discovering another band and people are telling us it was us.
You know, what's really amazing to me is that we recorded these like 2 songs at this studio, 3 songs at this studio, never realizing that we had enough material for an album.
Right.
We should have put out an album in 64, 65. We could have, who knows? You know, if it only takes 1 song to catch on and be a hit, and you're a star.
Well,
But
you
we
know,
didn't realize that we had
that's a
enough
whole
material
other
for an
thing.
album.
That's a whole other thing about why songs catch on and why they don't, and the business behind it that's involved. We were so young, we were just so delighted that it was all happening.
Yeah.
We weren't really involved in any of the business things.
Right.
And you know, when you're talking about getting the whole band together and calling and talking, like, you know, Fonz is really modest. But, you know, on the back of my mind was, now Fonz has played and recorded with, like, you know, many stars and has had a lustrous, a luminous career. And the back of my mind says, Jesus, Fonz going to be interested in resurrecting our music. And when I spoke to him, he was so excited about it and so happy. And the same thing with everybody. And you get into these weird things like, you know, Bell was always a wild guy, and he was a wild front man and a great singer. So when we all finally got together on Zoom, all we did was laugh. And Bell kept saying, that's not me singing. I didn't sing
No,
those
he was
songs.
singing on this.
It's too good. I don't sound like, I said, no, believe me, we wouldn't tell you. You sang lead on at least half of them, you know? And he said, no, that. And then it all started to come back. And now here we are with you, who I can't even tell you how wonderful it is. You know,
It's such an amazing
oh,
coincidence
sweatshirt there.
that your
was given-
Byron's daughter is a promoter. It's just
That's amazing.
So
Let me
amazing
ask you
that
guys a
we're-
question.
we were
What was the guys
inspired to make music again.
50
We're
years.
talking about creating new CDs.
Now,
We
what I
need
thought-
Byron.
Yes.
Yeah, be
We
good.
need
Well,
him.
listen, if you can find a way to bring my dad back, promise you, he
I
will-
got it.
I'll talk to my people.
There
Oh,
are,
Jody,
there
you
are
may not
everybody
know
on
this.
here wishes we could do that. I can't tell you.
For sure. For sure.
We have your
Jody.
dad on maybe another 6 or 8 tracks that are already recorded. There were too many to put on. So we still have other stuff that we did in 64 and 65 where your dad is playing and singing. And, you know, maybe we'll do something with that, you know, one step at a time. Isn't that what they say?
I just wish they
I
had
couldn't
phones
believe
in
how
those
much
days.
you,
We had no
I'd
video.
forgotten how much your dad sang in the
Yeah.
band.
Yeah.
But he had the high voice. He was above me in the harmony in almost every song. He did a lot of singing.
he never stopped dreaming of being on a stage ever. He played the
You know
piano.
what? Either did I.
But everybody wanted to be the Beatles, and he would tell me this, but I mean, so my dad, he played with my uncles. In fact, one of my uncles had asked me if you ever figured out which neighbor called the police on you guys for rehearsing, I guess, too loud in the house.
Uh-huh.
Hey, every neighbor.
Every neighbor.
We had a lot of that.
Right. But the cops never really made us stop, did they?
Never made us stop. It was my house mostly, and they used to come around,
Right.
and people
Yeah.
were pretty good about it. And my parents especially, because I'd come home from school, I get on the drums and I practice for 2 or 3 hours, banging the crap out of them, trying all different kinds of things. Never once did my father or mother tell me you got to stop.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Wow, you
That's
were
awesome.
lucky.
Let
What
me
if-
ask you guys a question.
What about my
You guys that didn't hear the music for 50
They were
years.
great.
What was your reaction when you first heard the music again? Were you impressed? Were you disappointed?
Me?
No, the Gary, Fonz, myself, who never heard this music for 50 years until a few weeks ago. What was your reaction when you first heard the music? Because personally, I was blown away at how good we were for such young kids. I never thought we were that good. But man, we
Steve,
were good.
Jody actually asked a question that I want to respond to, and then we should go to that. She
Okay.
asked about were her aunt and her
My
her
lovely
grandparents
Rita, my grandparents.
were they supportive? All I can tell you is I remember that they were so supportive of Byron, and they always loved having. I know we used to do vocal rehearsals. Some of the guys don't remember it, but Byron would, give out parts, and I was there practically every night, working with Byron on bass parts and music and how things were put together. So I have to say that they were unbelievably supportive, and so I just wanted to answer that since you asked it.
Can I ask can I say so? I'm going to make a comment, an observation, which is very strange to me. I think I'm the only one that never did any drugs. I may be wrong, but I've never wanted to do drugs because I knew I was going to go into engineering. Why am I the only one who can't remember anything?
It's because you didn't do any drugs.
Because you didn't do any
I'm
drugs.
thinking maybe there is something positive about those drugs, man, that gave you guys.
Hey, who says we did drugs?
I only took aspirin.
I apologize. I didn't mean to incriminate anyone.
It's like Bill Clinton. I never inhaled.
Did my dad smoke pot?
No.
Oh, hell no.
Did that, never.
So
Of course.
Wait, what?
Yeah, of course he did.
No.
I don't think.
No.
He was in the same room. He had to
That's
breathe
right.
in.
No, he didn't. That's right. I was wrong. That's right. It was just.
I actually don't think Byron did.
I don't think so.
He probably
I
did.
think we're still. You
I don't
got
think
at
he
this
did.
point, at 70 years old, I think, we're still in don't ask, don't tell. Don't ask. We don't know anything.
You can ask me, I'll tell you.
I don't know anything about anything.
I think it's ask, but we won't tell.
Oh, okay.
So the crazy part is that you all, except for Fonts, who went on to play with Hall & Oates, Mamas and the Papas, you played on the Cheers theme song, which is amazing. You played on Broadway. And then Ivan, you're a professor. Is that correct?
Well, I retired. The last school I taught, I was at Temple for 17 years. But the whole time I was a pretty well-known Philadelphia band leader playing private parties. So, and I'm still doing theater and I've never stopped really doing music. And I'm going to, what is the old saying? You say, I'm going to bop until I drop. And so, I'm going to just keep going. And
Ivan's not tooting his own horn enough. He's a published author, poet, actor, professor, musician, band leader for his whole life. While he was doing all these other things, he always had his band going. And he was one of the top bands in Philadelphia.
He hasn't stopped writing songs since then, and he's accumulated quite a repertoire.
He has over 200 songs
Going to be
in
experimenting.
his catalog.
well, you guys you're very nice to say things that very complimentary. Thank you. I would say to you, and I mean this, the fact that we're back together at this time of our lives, it's bittersweet because of Byron, but he was there long enough for the six of us to be together as a reunion. And it's the sweetest and it's the most positive thing I can imagine. All I can say is I would love to be able to and hope we can do more music together. It's like, I kind of feel like the accumulated wisdom and musical talent we have, and music could be such a positive force. And I don't hear a lot of music that I think is, but it can be. And I hope we can do some things that are very positive, especially for our generation that have gotten older and seen a lot and going through a lot. And I just I'll keep quiet, but I just feel so good that we're doing this.
So it's getting late. I don't know how much longer we're going to go along with this. But
Well-
to me, the most amazing thing of all is how after 50 years of not seeing each other, how the friendships became established so quickly. And it was just like we never broke up. It's like I saw these guys last week or last month. It was so natural. That, to me, that was the most amazing part of all. Besides the music, the friendship. We were so close when we were young. And that bond is still there.
I'd like to say something because I don't know we have much time tonight, but I think we're here for a reason, not just for our own enjoyment, but to send a message to other people, to encourage other people. There's such power in groups, so much more power in groups than an individual, making it big for yourself. There's something about a group, about a band that's maintained a life over 50 years. That's how powerful it is. And we've never lost it. And we're going to go as long as we can, but other people can do the same thing. We never attained the kind of success that, some of the top bands attained because we never made it our goal to be that. They paid their dues. We went elsewhere, but we retained something which anybody who's interested in music can. If you stay, you find a group, you find a team, and you work together, man, it's magical.
It's true.
Gary, you actually have a very interesting job. You got your PhD, is that right? And you work with the organization with Coco, the gorilla. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have two careers after the Oxfords. One was engineering. I wanted to be a bioengineer, and I did some of that, but I worked for a big company, Lockheed, as a research scientist for 20 years. And then I realized that's not what I want to do. I want to be an educator. I want to get into education. And I saw the Gorilla Fund. I dated the founder.
Gorilla.
The gorilla.
Okay, I dated Coco, I admit it. But no, I saw
You got $75.
I saw a natural way to motivate kids. Coco was the only gorilla that we knew at the time that we could speak to. Everyone's wanting to talk to the animals for millennia. And there was a gorilla who could speak with kids. And so I said, if I can't get kids interested in learning here, I can't do it anywhere. And so I volunteered, and eventually I became a full-time employee, and I've been here for 20 years now.
Wow.
And he is the COO of the company. And even though Coco passed away a few years ago, Gary is still involved in leading the charge to save the species.
Exactly. And save our species, because
Yes.
gorillas may
Yes.
hold the key to saving us. And they create empathy. They enable us to do something good for another species. And that's what we need.
See, both of us are into the primates because I am trying to get the monkeys out there.
The mon-
Hey, that was good, Jody.
Monkey.
That was very good, Jody.
Hey. All right.
Steve,
The monkey.
you got involved in antiques and you lived in France and
Yeah.
traveled, and then you were a restaurateur.
Then I came back to America, and when I was in Europe, I was full-blown hippie mode. I mean, I had the giant afro. We'll post pictures on the Oxford's Facebook page of how we look, how we evolved through the years. But I was full hippie mode, and as I was antique buying, I traveled around the world. So I've been in like over 30 countries, all over Asia, Africa, South America, Europe, and I based myself out of France because my best friend from Philly married a French girl and opened up a gourmet restaurant and a boutique hotel in Cannes, in the south of France. So that's where I based myself out of. I lived in his house for free, and then I traveled from there. So I did that for 15 years. Then came back to the States and got married. I didn't get married till I was 40. Then I opened a restaurant with a childhood friend, and it blew up. Became a super hot restaurant. We've had all kinds of movie stars from Justin Timberlake and Cameron Diaz, Michael Jordan, Scotty, just everybody. It was a very, very hot restaurant. And we
Now,
did
this
that for
is down in
12
Del Rey,
years.
right?
We
This
just
is
sold
in
it
Del Rey
in
where you
2018.
this is in Del Rey.
to 2018.
I'm sorry to keep butting in on you, but this is in Del Rey where you still now live. In
Yes.
Del Rey, Florida,
Right
right?
next to Boca Raton, Florida.
I got you.
Joel, you are a computer expert. Is that fair to say?
I'm a computer engineer. I have 40 years business in the computer hardware and software design. So I did 30 years with IBM, and I did 10 years with a company called Cadence Design Systems, which is near where Gary is, up in Silicon Valley. We were based in New York, but we went out to Cadence every few months to interface with the people out there. So I did that for 10 years. After 40 years in the business, I said, I want to retire from that. But I always kept the business going, doing custom home theater design for people. And I've been doing that for like 40 years. And other things I've done work with the Roosevelt Library to digitize Roosevelt's speeches, his fireside chats and everything. And I did all that kind of work for those people. And so I've kind of, and now I do the audio and video systems for the town I live in, keep that stuff going and design systems for them. And I teach adult education in the spring and the fall for digital photography, the iPad, the iPhone, the home theater, and Windows 10, all that kind of stuff for adults who are afraid to turn their computers on. So I keep myself busy, and I build computers for people as well. I don't buy
Obviously,
computers, I build them.
We don't believe in retirement, obviously.
No, if you
No.
retire, it's all over. You know, if
I'm
you
retired.
just sit down and do nothing, you're not gonna live much longer after that. You got to keep doing things. If you saw my setup here in my office, it's like NASA control. I got 3 screens going.
Well, and it depends on your interest. I mean, I'm retired, but I've never been so busy.
Exactly, it's what happens.
That's what Joel's saying.
Well,
yeah.
I want to tell you guys what this opportunity did for my family is that when we knew that my dad was very sick, and I would go there every day. And my dad was one of those people that if he knew he was sick, he acted sick. Like it affected his brain and he would feel bad for himself. And we really didn't make a point for a long time of letting him know that he was terminal. And I was trying to figure out, because I got a lot of advice from people that would say, make sure you ask all the questions that you ever wanted to ask.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of thought to myself, well, how am I going to do this without making it obvious to my dad that I'm trying to learn everything because he's going to die? And what I did was I used the Oxfords and this experience to sit there and ask my dad, tell me about the Oxfords, tell me about you as a teenager. And I went there every single day and he would tell my mom and I stories about you guys and about growing up in the area. And this opportunity that you guys had an even larger effect on me because it was the perfect segue for me to be able to interview my dad without actually letting him know why I was.
Right.
So he thought you were asking him for the liner notes?
He actually made my mom do that. I didn't actually think my dad was going to be here to see this happen today. That was the only thing I really was hoping would happen, and it just didn't happen. But he left me with all of you guys to fill in all the stories. I think he couldn't get as excited as he wanted to because here my dad was finally getting his dream, and he was never going to see it. He spoke
But Jody,
my whole life about you guys.
you know, Jody, you're very lucky that you got to talk with him like that. Because one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't do that. And I really don't know much about my father and his life and what he did in World War II and how he started his business, what he did during the Depression. And now I wish so much that I could ask him all these questions, but it's too late. He's been gone for over 30 years. So you're very lucky that you had a chance to do that.
Yeah,
This-
if part of this experience is just to raise an awareness with people and their children to communicate and share these experiences, because everybody thinks, oh, I'll do it some other time. It's not important. You're into your own ego, you're in your own life, and then it just the moment passes.
Right.
So if you're listening out there, talk to your kids, have your kids talk to you, make some kind of records of your family history.
Well, I told you guys what I did with my kids. When they turned 21, I sat them down individually and told them my entire life story, everything about me. So now they really know their father, not just the image I want to portray. I told them the truth about myself. And I
By
wish
the way,
my dad would have done that with me, but he was too busy. I was too busy. That never happened.
you can
Well,
see
don't
Bell,
do that here, because they'll shut us down.
anyway, I want to make sure that people know that Bell has put a lot of energy into your father's legacy
I have.
by writing.
Jody, are we on a time limit on this conversation?
It's 2020. Where's any of us going?
Right.
Okay.
Good.
I got to tell you guys something funny. I just realized by looking at the screen right now that we're live. I thought all this time when I got on, I said, you didn't start without me. And then I guess you did. And then I just realized all this now, and I'm saying to myself, gee, would I have said all these things if I knew I was live?
You
I
didn't
don't
know.
know.
Don't worry, you
Holy
didn't say
cow.
anything too bad, Ivan.
Oh, I
You're
didn't
okay.
badly. All right.
You're all right.
That's good.
So the CD is available and they're limited on Amazon. The Oxfords, a classic Philly band. And we have the Facebook page, so everybody's going to follow you guys to see what's next. I think the biggest thing that I learned is that you're all in your 70s and you're just now being you're rock stars in your 70s for the first time. And that I think that it just gives people hope that you just, you never know. You just never know who's paying attention. You never know who's watching, and anything can happen in this world. And what you guys, whatever this is now my dad's legacy. And for my kids to be able to see what my dad accomplished. And I hope that all of your families also feel the same way that I do. I mean,
So I gave it to my kids, and they were driving up to Atlanta from Florida, and they played it in the car the whole way. One of the biggest thrills I ever got was
Wow.
when they called me and said, "Oh my God, Dad, I can't believe how good you really were. You really were in a band. You really did all these things." It was fantastic. 'Cause my kids
all
never
of your
heard one
kids are
word.
like me, and we're like, really? Our dads were cool back then?
Your dad was cool,
I'm
Jody.
still-
He
Your
was
dad
definitely
was cool.
Jody,
My
And,
dad was-
the songs themselves, I've written a lot, and I'm a pretty studied musician. And when I go back now, and Fonz and I, we talk about this every once in a while, the songs in their own way are very sophisticated, and the harmonic concepts and
Yes.
where they go
Yes.
and key changes and I went, yeah, we really had a kind of innate musicality. Remember, you know how young we were, 16, 17. And so when the Beatles came out, I mean, they were like mid-20s. So we were really babies. We never had the chance to get to our mid-20s together and create the music that we might have done had we, evolved together. So it's a wonderful accomplishment. And the music these guys played, I was always overwhelmed because I was the last one to come into the band. And I had come from a background of doo-wop and a cappella. And I just remember the first time I heard them play, I was floored because everything they played sounded just like the records. And they just said, and the one thing we don't have is another singer and somebody who can write songs. And I said, don't you worry about that. And I went home. I said, I have all these songs. And I went home and started writing songs just for the band. And it was just a wonderful
So
thing.
you were the final piece of the puzzle, Ivan. You
The last-
made it all gel.
Jody, could you do something for all of us? Can you hold that CD up so close to the camera that we can see your father? A little bit closer, just a little, way
And
up.
point him out.
Right there, right there.
Right.
Okay, so Byron is the bottom row.
Right there.
Right there,
Right there. Yep.
Keyboards.
right next to me. Man, he was a
You're
good looking,
there.
he was a good looking sucker.
Hey.
Byron
that
was a cool
expands.
And
guy.
I'm like 100 pounds heavier
Yeah,
in
he-
that picture.
Right there.
and there's Joel with a ton of hair.
Yeah. Right there is Joel. Yep.
But it's-
Ivan's on top of.
Yeah.
so to
Hey,
speak.
we should also say, if we haven't, we need a couple big shout outs. One is to Roger Maglio, who is the president of Gear Fab, having the vision and the confidence to go ahead and do this with us. Big shout out to Roger. Mike Kuzman, who initiated this 20 years ago with contacting me and saying, guys, they'd love to have an album. Don't you have your music? So Mike, and also all of the friends and people that came to see us from Olney High School and Northeast High School and Germantown High School and Central, and at the time was called Girls High School and Lower Mary
Girls
and
High.
Abington. All these people became a following of the Oxfords. And in part, I know at some level that this CD coming out, it kind of unites all these people again. I've had many people write me emails and say, I'm suddenly flooded with all these memories of all
Yeah.
these great times we had and the
Nostalgia
band and how much fun
touchstone.
it was being together.
You guys deserve it. I mean, you just really deserve it. You were a very big part of my life growing up, and I only got a chance to ever meet you because of the circumstances. So I look forward to not ever replacing my dad, but adding another Blau into
There
your.
you go. Like the sixth
Right?
Beatle. There you go.
Yes, I'm the sixth Oxford.
But we need a
You know,
Blau
guys-
in the family, and we have one. So
Yeah.
I was
Well,
really
now-
surprised at the quality of the songwriting. I think you guys were great. Every song sounds different, and there's not a clinker on the whole album. Every song is good. Some are better than others, but there's no bad songs on there. You did a very good job, and you were just babies.
I
That's
take your word for it.
amazing. So
Oh, I'm
good.
making my son get a job now that I don't know what happened in my dad's childhood, but when he was traveling on the subway and playing with you guys, at the same age, my dad had a babysitter and wouldn't let my sister and I leave the front of the house.
The world has changed, babe. The
He
world-
was, oh my
I can tell
gosh.
you too about your dad, and in that particular family, the Blau family, there was, I remember your grandfather, because I actually was there more than, he made you take responsibility. And I remember that. He made Byron take responsibility, and Byron took responsibility. And that's what he professed. There was no, when you were a little kid, your aunts were like babies. Cindy
Yeah,
and
well, there was a 10-year age difference.
they were
Cindy and
babies,
Mindy.
but Byron was like, he was treated like an adult. And I just remember that.
Well, I guess he had to be. My bubby kept having kids, so he was.
Yeah.
So I think he was the surrogate.
Yep.
So,
Yep. He was like, he had to help out, and he didn't take any crap from his younger brothers and sisters. He would tell them when they had I remember that, it was a very strong family. You don't see that.
Jody, I don't remember. He went into the Coast Guard, and if he hadn't gone into the Coast Guard, we might have stayed together longer, right?
He was the first one to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not because of the Vietnam War, and he did that.
No,
well.
he was getting drafted.
That's what I
If
mean.
he didn't go to the Coast Guard, he would have gotten sent.
He was going to Canada.
So if it hadn't been for that war,
Yeah, well, that was
pesky
it.
war.
I remember that he was getting drafted and that he made this choice because he said this way he has a choice where if he just lets them draft him, they have him. So this was a choice he made.
a wise choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, for
Yes.
telling Byron stories, one of the things that, always amazed me, and in certain ways, it produced some funny results. So I think, your dad was born with perfect pitch, which means that, an A goes like 440 vibrations. And so when he sings the A, it's a perfect pitch. So all of us had very good, what it's called relative pitch, which means as long as we were all tuned up together, even if it wasn't in perfect pitch, our harmonies and everything would blend perfectly. So when we would do something, occasionally your dad would say, he'd be supposed to sing this note. He said, and he'd sing it and it didn't sound right. And we said, what's going on? It doesn't sound right. He says, well, you're all singing the wrong notes. And we said, what? He said, well, I can't help it when I have to sing, an A or a B, because he was like a tenor voice. He'd sing it and he said, you're all singing the wrong notes. And we'd have to kind of get back in tune to perfect pitch because it drove him crazy. And it just drove me crazy too, because it sounded good and I couldn't understand it. Now, of course, I understand, but I
Like
didn't.
living tuning fork.
Yes.
With
Yeah,
the
the
tuning
human
fork.
tuning fork.
When I got the tapes back, when I was digitizing the tapes, I purchased a tape recorder because I have a big Ampex machine here from the studio that's not working. So I needed something that would work. And it's over in the corner here. You can't see it. But I put the tape on and I called up your father. I said, Byron, listen to this tape and tell me if it's in tune. Because it has a variable speed knob on it. And the detent may not be exactly right. Come the factory, they set that. So the detent is supposed to be perfect. So I left it in a position. I said, Byron, tell me if this is in tune. He says, yep, it's perfect. So I knew that the tape recorder was running correctly so I could make the digital copies and they
Right.
be perfect tune. So
There's
that
a
was,
connection between the pitch in those days, not today, the pitch and whether the song is running at what tempo.
Right.
So we knew we had the right tempo if the pitch was spot on.
Right.
And it was like a running joke with your dad. Like you would burp and he would go C flat. You would drop a book and he would go A minor.
Hey,
That's
man.
true. That's true.
Jody, you asked a minute ago, like, what does anybody have to do in these days except, stay home with the pandemic? Well, I have a dog that's really waiting, expecting me to help give him some dinner, and we're watching his blood sugar. Really, seriously, it just became a problem. So I need to go take care of that now. And
Clancy.
So
I think we can wrap this up.
So I hope that everybody knows a little bit more about why this incredible thing happened. They can go purchase this limited CD, and there's going to be some physical vinyl that comes out in Europe, I believe, right? In Europe. I just want to thank you guys. I want to thank you for trusting me. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn about you guys, and I'm very excited for the future of the Oxfords. Who knows? Maybe by 80 you'll be on tour.
Who knows? And we want to thank you too, Jody. for
Thank you,
coming in,
Jody.
thank you, Jody.
blending right in with
Jody.
us all and helping us. You've been absolutely awesome.
You made
Thank
all
you
of this
so
happen.
much.
You made this happen.
Yes,
Not really.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, really.
Oh,
this part of it. The
And
social
wherever
media
my
part.
dad is, he
Yeah.
better make sure that we stick together.
There
He's,
you go.
I know.
synchronicity, and like they said that I was the last piece of the puzzle, but no, Jody, you're the last piece of
Oh,
the puzzle.
very good, Ivan.
50
Very
plus
good.
years later,
You're
that
the
has
next
made all
piece of
this
the puzzle.
happen the way it's happening.
Thank you.
Let's do this again because the story is not over.
The story is
Absolutely.
just starting.
We could do this for hours.
Yeah.
I love you
It's a
guys
shame
so
we didn't-
much.
All right,
I don't
Jody.
think unless before I came on, did you guys play any more of the CD at all? Or was
No,
it just
they're gonna
that
have
one
to
song?
buy it here anymore, Ivan.
Yeah, they're gonna have to buy it, but we're gonna share
Okay.
the snippets
Well,
on your
I
page.
think Gary said this, and I think it's in the liner notes, that we just hope everyone has as much enjoyment listening to it as we had making this music, because it was a joy for us.
Boy.
Absolutely. Best
so
times of my
glad.
life. Best times of my life.
Well, guys, congratulations on everything. Good luck.
Thank you, Jody.
I
Thank you,
love you
Jody.
all. Be
Okay.
safe.
Thank you.
Talk
Talk
to
to
you
you real
soon.
soon. Bye-bye,
Bye, guys.
everybody.
Everybody,
Have a good
love
night.
you guys.